My phone buzzed at 9:14 on a Thursday morning, and my sister's name lit up the screen like it always did, bright, casual, unaware of the wreckage she was about to leave behind.
Hey, so quick thing, Bianca said, not even bothering with hello.
We had to tighten the guest list for the wedding. Venue changed. It's smaller now.
I already knew where this was going.
I could feel it in the pause before she spoke again.
You're not on it anymore.
I'm sorry, Mira. You don't belong in this family the way you used to. Not since the divorce. Not since everything with Dad's business. People are going to ask questions, and I can't have that energy at my wedding. I stood in my kitchen in Alexandria, Virginia, coffee going cold in my hand, and said nothing for a long moment. Not since the divorce. Not since everything with Dad's business. As if I were the scandal. As if I hadn't spent 18 months rebuilding a life that had been taken apart, piece by people who were never going to admit their part in it. You don't belong in this family anymore, she said again, softer this time. Like softness made it kinder.
Didn't. Understood, I said, and hung up before my voice could betray me.
I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment. It wasn't heartbreak. Heartbreak had already come and gone months earlier, in a different room, over a different betrayal. What I felt standing in my kitchen that morning was something quieter and colder. The particular stillness of a woman who has just been told one more time that her seat at the table was never really hers to keep. I set my coffee down. I didn't cry. I hadn't cried in a long time. Not since I'd learned that crying changed nothing about how my family saw me, the daughter who left, the sister who made things difficult, the name nobody said out loud anymore at holidays, what none of them knew, what I had never once tried to explain, because explaining myself to people who'd already decided who I was had stopped feeling worth it, was what I'd been building quietly for the last year and a half, in rooms none of them had ever bothered to ask about. I picked my phone back up, not to call Bianca back, to open my email where a message had been sitting unread since 7 a.m. from a name that made my chest go tight every time I saw it. The subject line read, "Confirming your feature. Final print approval needed by Friday." The email was from Devon Pierce, Vogue's features editor. I'd met her 7 months earlier at a small business summit in DC. Back when I was still introducing myself as just a florist, the same phrase my family used whenever anyone asked what I did. What I never said out loud, because I'd learned not to, was that just a florist had grown into something else entirely. Mira Ashwood Design Now supplied floral installations for 3 of the top hotel chains on the East Coast. And 8 months ago, I'd quietly signed a licensing deal that put my sustainable flower branding into stores in 11 states. None of them knew. Not Bianca. Not my parents. I'd stopped bringing my work to family dinners. The way you stop bringing an umbrella to a house that's already decided it isn't going to rain on you. Devon's email confirmed what I've been holding onto for weeks without telling a soul. A full feature in Vogue's September issue, profiling 5 women reshaping American small business. My face, my name, my story, printed for the first time exactly the way I'd lived it, without anyone editing it down to fit a narrative more comfortable for the people who'd rather I stayed small. I sat with that for a long moment, the wedding call still ringing faintly in my ears. You don't belong in this family anymore. I thought about calling my mother to tell her. I thought about it for maybe 4 seconds before I remembered the last time I tried to share something good. My first 6-figure contract, 11 months ago, and how my father had responded by asking, in front of the whole table, whether I'd finally found a way to make the divorce worth something. So I didn't call anyone. I replied to Devon with 2 words, confirmed, thank you, and went back to work, because that was the only place that had never once made me feel like I needed defending. The wedding was 6 weeks away. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself a lot of things that summer that weren't quite true yet. What I didn't know
What none of us knew that Thursday morning
was that the timeline was about to collide in a way I couldn't have planned even if I'd wanted to. The September issue was shipping to newsstands the same week as Bianca's wedding. Her fiancé's family, the Whitfields, sat on the boards of 2 magazines and half the country clubs in Connecticut. They read Vogue religiously, and in 6 weeks, they were going to open it to page 43 and see a face they'd been told didn't belong anywhere near their son's wedding. The article dropped 9 days before the wedding, not 6 weeks like I'd expected. Devon called to say they'd moved the issue up for a fall preview push, and by the time I saw the digital version myself, it had already been shared 400 times. I didn't think much of it. I was 3 states away at a hotel install in Boston, elbow deep in eucalyptus and wire, when my phone started buzzing in a way it never had before. Note 1 text. Note 2. 14. In the space of an hour, most of them from numbers I hadn't spoken to in years, cousins, an old family friend, my mother's sister from Ohio. Is this really you? Page 43. Hoshi. Mira, I had no idea. Why didn't you tell anyone? The first call I actually answered was my mother's, and her voice had a strange, careful brightness to it. The kind people use when they're trying to figure out how much they're allowed to be proud of you. Sweetheart, why didn't you say anything? Constance Whitfield just called me. She's Mira. She's thrilled. She wants to know if you'd consider doing the flowers for Bianca's rehearsal dinner. She said, and I'm quoting her, I didn't know we had someone like this in the family. I stood there with a stem of eucalyptus in my hand and felt something in my chest go very still, the way it does right before you understand a thing completely. Someone like this in the family. 9 days ago, I hadn't belonged in it at all. Did Bianca ask you to call me? I said. The pause. Too long. She's been trying to reach you herself. She's embarrassed, honey. It's a lot, all at once. I almost laughed. Embarrassed wasn't the word I'd have chosen. I'd have chosen caught. I hung up and scrolled through the messages a second time, slower now. And that's when I saw it. A screenshot someone had sent from the Whitfield family's private wedding group chat, forwarded by a cousin who clearly hadn't thought about who she was forwarding it to. Constance Whitfield, writing to her son 3 days before the article even published, apparently unaware yet of who I was. Has anyone actually met this Mira? Bianca's mother keeps changing her story about why she's not on the list. Makes me wonder what we don't know about this family. They'd already been asking questions. Bianca just hadn't told me that part. I closed the message and looked at the wedding invitation still pinned to my Boston hotel room's little corkboard.
The one I'd brought along out of habit.
Out of some old unkillable hope. 9 days left. And for the first time since that Thursday morning phone call, I picked up my phone and started typing a reply to my sister. I got your messages. I typed, then deleted it. We need to talk. I typed, then deleted that too. In the end, I wrote 4 words and nothing more. I'll call you tonight. Bianca picked up before the first ring finished. Mira, thank God I've been trying to explain to Constance that it was a miscommunication. That of course you were always going to be there. That the venue thing was just... Stop, I said. And something in my voice must have surprised her, because she actually did. You called me 9 days before your wedding and told me I don't belong in this family anymore. That wasn't a miscommunication, Bianca. That was a sentence. You built it on purpose. Silence on the line. I let it sit there. I panicked, she finally said, quieter now. Dad said the Whitfields were asking about you, about the divorce, about everything. He said it would look better if you weren't there, drawing questions. I should never have listened to him. I know that now. I've known it for 9 days. You knew it the moment Constance Whitfield called Mom, sounding thrilled, I said. Not before. She didn't argue with that, which told me more than any apology would have. Please, Mira, the rehearsal dinner is Friday. Come. Not for the flowers, not for Constance, not for any of that. Just come as my sister. Never should have let Dad's fear become my decision. I see that now, seeing what you actually built while none of us were paying attention. I thought about the 18 months since the divorce. The family dinners, where I sat quietly while my father found new ways to remind
everyone what I'd lost. I thought about the licensing deal.
I'd signed a loan in a lawyer's office with no one to call afterward who'd understand what it meant. I thought about Devon's email and the 2 words I'd written back. Confirmed.
Thank you. Sent to a stranger who'd believed in my work
Faster than my own family had. I'll think about it, I said. The same 4 words I imagine get said in 100 family fractures a year, carrying the same weight every time. Not a yes, not a no, just the door left open a crack. I hung up and sat on the edge of the hotel bed. September's magazine issue open on my lap to page 43. My own face looking back at me under a headline. I still hadn't fully let myself believe. The quiet architect of American floral design. Friday was 3 days away, and somewhere in Connecticut, I already knew, Constance Whitfield was drawing up a seating chart with my name back on it, in a much better seat than the one I'd have chosen for myself. I arrived at the rehearsal dinner Friday evening in a navy dress, not the pale, apologetic kind I might have chosen a year ago, but one that felt like mine. I came for Bianca. I told myself that walking in, and mostly it was true. Constance Whitfield found me within minutes, clasping both my hands like she'd been waiting all week to do it. Mira, I have to tell you, I read that article twice. My mother-in-law's cousin runs a hotel group in Boston.
She said, "You're the reason they redid their entire fall collection."
I had no idea we were nearly related to someone so remarkable. She said it warmly, without a trace of irony, entirely unaware that 9 days earlier her question, "What don't we know about this family?" had nearly cost me my place at this table. My father found me by the bar an hour later, drink untouched in his hand, the way he used to look right before pretending he hadn't been avoiding a conversation. "You should have told us," he said, "about the deal, the magazine, all of it." "You never asked," I said. And I meant it exactly the way it landed. Not cruel, just true. 18 months of dinners, where my name was mentioned only in relation to what I'd lost, never once in relation to what I might be building. He didn't argue. That told me everything. Bianca found me last, slipping her hand into mine, the way she used to when we were girls, sneaking into rooms. We weren't allowed in. "I don't deserve you being here," she said. "No," I agreed gently. "But I'm here anyway. Not for Dad, not for Constance, for the sister who used to defend me before she learned it wasn't convenient anymore." Her eyes filled, and for once I let her sit in that discomfort instead of rushing to smooth it over. The way I'd smoothed over everything for years. "I want to make this right," she said. "Not just tonight. From now on." "Then start by asking," I said. "Not assuming. Not deciding who I am based on what's easiest for everyone else. Just ask." She nodded, and something in her face shifted. Not a performance, something real. I didn't get an apology from my father that night. Not the kind that undoes years in a sentence. But I got something else. Something I hadn't let myself want in a long time. I watched a room full of people who'd once decided I didn't belong anywhere near it. Learn, slowly, imperfectly, to look at me and actually see who I'd become. Stayed until the last toast. And when I finally drove home past midnight, page 43 still sitting folded on my passenger seat, I realized I hadn't come back for their approval at all. I'd simply stopped needing it to walk back through the door.